1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Dobar dan svima. Dobrodošli na treću ovogodišnju i ja mislim poslednju ovogodišnju konferenciju Nacionalne ekološke asocijacije. Danas smo ovde sa vama da bi vam predstavili ono što smo uradili u ovoj godini za 8 meseci postojanja naše organizacije. Sa nama su danas naši gosti. Ja im se zahvaljujem na tome što su došli po ovom snežnom danu. Naši gosti su gospođa Tia Liber iz Američke ambasade u Beogradu, zadužena za oblast životne sredine. Ona će se obratiti u napred snimljenom video porukom jer nije mogla da prisustvuje danas. Zatim će se iz Londona uključiti gospodin David Stanners, bivši direktor programa Evropske agencije za životnu sredinu. A sa nama su ovde gospodin Simon Ilse iz fondacije Heinrich Boll, direktor kancelarije u Srbiji, i gospodin Antoine Avignon, program menadžer za oblast zaštite životne sredine u Delegaciji Evropske Unije u Beogradu. Naravno, sa vama smo i Milenko Jovanović sa moje desne strane, prva i najveća zvezda Nacionalne ekološke asocijacije, čovek koji je ovo sve osmislio i sa kojim sam zajedno i sa još par drugara i napravili ovu Nacionalnu ekološku asocijaciju sa ciljem da zapravo obezbedimo ljudima mogućnost da pristupe pravoj, na činjenicama zasnovanoj i na naučnim saznanjima ocenjenoj životnoj sredini, kako bi mogli sami, na kraju krajeva, kao svi ravnopravni građani, da donose odluku o sebi, svojim porodicama, svom životu i na kraju krajeva i sve druge odluke koje jedan građanin može donese u okviru jednog društva. Ovim bi završio svoje uvodno izlaganje i dao reč gospodinu Milenku Jovanoviću. Nakon toga ćemo imati video, zatim uključenje iz Londona i nastavit ćemo dalje sa konferencijom. Milenko, izvoli.
Dobar dan svima. Veliko poštovanje svima sa ove strane, naravno i sa ove strane stola. Moram da priznam da prvi put osjećam malu tremu zbog važnosti ove konferencije, kao i zbog autoriteta koji su prisutni ovde i koji sigurno mogu da cenzurišu sve ono što će biti rečeno, a što je u funkciji našeg osnovnog nastajanja Nacionalne ekološke asocijacije. Prvo, ne shvatam sebe, niti jesam nikakva ni zvezda, ni prva, ni druga. Možda sam bio malo tamnija zvezda, pa sam pobledeo u odnosu na prvobitnu nameru, ali kako je nastala Nacionalna ekološka asocijacija? S obzirom na to da smo pre svega Dejan i ja, osetili smo uskraćeni da ne možemo da damo svoj adekvatan, stručni i energetski doprinos rešavanju problema u životnoj sredini u Srbiji u okviru institucije u kojima radimo više i tako. I prosto smo tražili rešenje kako to da uradimo. Prema tome, odgovor je bio Nacionalna ekološka asocijacija koja je okupila ne samo prijatelje, nego ljude koji sa iste strane činjenica, odnosno sa iste strane istine i znanja dovoljnog da pomognu građanima, da pomognu institucijama koje je potrebno da bi se pravo stanje i rešenja našli. Šta je to što je možda malo drugačije nego druge institucije? To je što smo želi da budemo nacionalna, naravno apolitična, ne ulazeći u naše lične navijačke opredeljenja, prosto da nemamo nikakve limite koji nas ometaju u definisanju problema i u iznošenju to u javnost. Žalosno je što moram da kažem da je u okviru ovog stručnog saveta Nacionalne ekološke asocijacije uglavnom sede ljudi koji imaju hrabrosti da kažu ono što je činjenica, da deo svoga znanja i informacija prenesu u javnost, naravno pre svega zbog građana bi čuli. Čudno je da je potrebna hrabrost reći istinu, a ispada da nije potrebna hrabrost reći ono suprotno. Kad posle 7 meseci malo više ovog rada u ovoj godini, da li smo mi kao Nacionalna ekološka asocijacija zadovoljni dosadašnjim rezultatima? Mislim da jesmo, zato što smo postali prosto nezaobilazni u traženju pravih informacija. Ne zato što mi jedini znamo, što smo najbolji, najpametniji, nego zato što nesebično ono što postoji kao informacija, ono što znamo, saopštavamo u cilju informisanja i u cilju definisanja i rešavanja problema. To je nešto što se podrazumeva u nekom vrednostnom sistemu u kome pripadamo, kogod ne misli tako, mislim da veoma greši. Znači, šta je naš još jednom, koji su rezultati? To je da postoji informacije koje se u javnosti prenose raznim gostovanjima, isključivo na zahtev medija, na zahtev građana, na zahtev drugih organizacija, nigde nismo tražili i nudili da budemo ni gosti, ni da govorimo. Uvijek su nas tražili. Ako je tačno da jedan čovek, Dejan Lekić, je napravio 3 aplikacije XECO i da je to dostupno naravno preko NEA, a da čitave institucije tako kvalitetne aplikacije koje daju ne samo adekvatne informacije o kvalitetu vazduha, naravno pola, nego i analize trenutne. Znači, ako on može to sam da uradi, a institucije sve to ukupno sa brojčanim kapacitetom, pa čak verovatno i stručnim, jači, nisu mogli, govori da smo mi na pravom putu i da je to neophodno. Ono što je sada aktualno i što je vrlo bitno, to je takozvano otvaranje poglavlja 27 oko klastera. Mislim da je broj 4. Naravno, zna se već deklarativno da je to zahtevno poglavlje, zahteva predan rad, zahteva puno novca i prosto je to pomalo i proslavljeno. Ja mislim da tu nikakvog slavlja ne treba da bude, jer čeka državu veliki rad. To je, mogu da uporedim, kao da smo dobili građevinsku dozvolu za objekat, veliki objekat u kome će živeti kvalitetno stanari. Pošto smo malo zakasnili sa tim, ili već dozvole malo kasnije dobijena, prosto treba da tek nas čeka, znači, i grubi radovi, i te prvo zemljani grubi radovi, završni radovi, useljenje. Prema tome, da li će se to desiti, da li će se poglavlje zatvoriti, apsolutno ne zavisi od građevinske dozvole. Zavisi od rada onih investitora, to smo mi, to je za građane Srbije. U toj zgradi će živeti građani Srbije. Prema kvalitetu kako žive u Evropi i u svetu, kažem normalne, razvijene zemlje, ne samo razvijene ekonomski, nego i prema odnosu, prema životnoj sredini i prema zdravlju. Zaštita vode, vazduha, zemljišta, bavljenje adekvatno otpadom je nešto što nema alternativu. To je ono što nije princip Nacionalne ekološke asocijacije, to je princip univerzalni svuda u svetu i to mora biti očigledno na pravi način prezentovano u okviru ovoga poglavlja. To poglavlje koje je znači prihvaćeno, to su naše ideje, naši predlozi, naši planovi i sad počinje ocenjivanje. Došli smo prosto kod profesora i oni će nas ispitivati i proveravati. Nikakve samo deklarativne ocene svoga rada neće moći više da budu. Prosto imat ćemo objektivnu analizu i objektivnu ocenu doprinosa države Srbije u tom putu ka izgradnji zgrade u kojoj će živjeti građani Srbije daleko kvalitetnije da bismo bili članovi te porodice. Čak i bez članstva u Evropskoj uniji, što je, koliko vidim, cilj, je neophodno dostići standarde koji postoje. To je ono čemu teži Nacionalna ekološka asocijacija, to su naši principi koji se ni malo ne razlikuju od onih, da kažemo, evropskih. Šta je to sve od izazova? Pa pre svega kapaciteti institucija su za sada nedovoljni. To nije moje subjektivno mišljenje i procena, to je ono što pišu u izveštajima Evropske komisije u stanju o napretku. Prosto, svi zajedno stručnjaci u Srbiji, ako su ujedine, pitanje je da će biti dovoljno. Samo u institucijama državnim nikako neće biti dovoljno. Znači, mi ne samo da pokušamo da pomognemo i pomažemo organizacijama, građanima, medijima, da do njih dođe prava informacija u pravo vreme, naravno, jer su principi pravovremena informacija, tačna informacija, da bi se na vreme delovalo, ako je potrebno, naravno, prilikom velikih zagađenja, odnosno prilikom loše stanje životne sredine, nego je potrebno i da se ponudimo i institucijama koji su sigurno sa kadrom pomalo invalidni, da bi se novi zadaci i novi kvalitativni i kvantitativni obaveze dostigle. Ono što moram da pozovem, ja ne znam da li je to na kraju ili na početku trebalo da bude, prvo, želeo bih da prestane ćutanje stručnjaka koji znaju. Ne kažem da menadžeri moraju da znaju sve o struci kojom se bavi institucija. Naprotiv, ali moraju da imaju prave savjetnike, prave saradnike koji im daju informacije. Za sada to očigledno nije slučaj, da slušamo često pogrešne definicije problema, ponajmanje rešenja i zbog toga prosto da i stručnjaci iz ove oblasti slobodno i uz pomoć Nacionalne ekološke asocijacije i sami mogu da se obrate i mogu da kažu ono što je građanima važno. Ne ispred institucije, nego iz svoga znanja, svojih diploma, svoga iskustva i svoje odgovornosti prema onome što građani očekuju. Ne da govorim da je nešto a priori pogrešno, nego prosto svi treba da budemo sa iste strane. Od institucije pa do građanina najnižeg socijalnog i obrazovnog nivoa. Naravno da će nam to pomoći Evropska unija i, nadam se, i druge institucije, jer ako smo na pravom putu, a to se tek sada počinje da proverava. Sve ono što je do sada bilo, to su bila subjektivna ili ponekad i političke ocene uspeha, sada smo došli do te građevinske dozvole i da čekamo da što predaju useljenje. Da li će to biti za par godina ili ne znam kada, zavisi isključivo od angažmana svih resursa koji postoje, a Nacionalna ekološka asocijacija spada u te resurse koji mogu biti, ja mislim, pozitivni i da mogu da pomognu. Tako da samo prestanak ćutanja u smislu struke i nastavak borbe za ono što je naše osnovno pravo kao građanja. Naravno, nadam se da će nas gospodin Avignon i fondacija čuvena podržati ne finansijski, nego pre svega strukturalno, da će upravo one ideje koje su korisne građanima, a ne korisne bilo kakvoj grupi, podržati da bi bilo bolje, jer srećnija i zdravija populacija, znači radi se veoma o zdravlju ugroženom preko prekomjernog zagađenja, sva tri medije životne sredine je interes Evropske unije, interes svih partnera Republike Srbije. Hvala vam još jednom.
Hvala Milenko na ovom uvodnom delu. Ja bih sad zamolio tehniku da puste video obraćanje gospođe Tije Liber iz Američke ambasade u Beogradu, koja nažalost nije mogla da bude danas sa nama. Molim vas.
Dobar dan. My name is Tia Lieber, and I am the Environment, Science, Technology, and Health Specialist for the U.S. Embassy in Belgrade. I'd like to give you a summary of the current developments in the areas of environmental protection and climate change the U.S. government is taking, including the projects that are ongoing in Serbia. I am happy to announce the United States is back at the table ready to tackle climate change. The first day President Biden took office, he rejoined the Paris Agreement and reestablished the United States' position of leadership to address climate crisis on the global stage. As he outlined at COP26 in Glasgow last month, his climate policy involves all agencies within the government with aggressive actions to cut greenhouse gases, which will reduce air pollution and improve our health, create good-paying jobs in a renewable energy, the renewable energy sector, and advance environmental justice. Biden is committed to cutting greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030, reaching 100% emission-free power sector by 2035, and achieving a net zero economy by 2050. The President is committed to partnering with countries to strengthen them for the impacts of climate change to reduce risk of instability. It is the interest of the United States that Serbia joins the European Union. So we are excited that the EU member states agreed to open Cluster 4 in accession talks on December 17th. Cluster 4, which contains the Green Agenda, covers chapters on transportation, energy, environmental protection, and climate change. There have been a lot of exciting events on the environmental front for Serbia since the spring with the adoption of the climate change and energy laws. In the last 6 weeks, things have really picked up, starting with the signing of multiple headline agreements at COP26 in Glasgow. We are happy that President Vučić signed pledges and agreements with goals to reach in just 8 years. These are the Global Methane Pledge, which aims to reduce methane emissions by 30%. The Declaration of Forests and Land Use, which recognizes the roles of forest ecosystems in achieving a balance between greenhouse gas emissions, carbon sinks, maintaining biodiversity, sustainable land use and adapting to climate change, and 3 ambitious goals in the Glasgow Breakthrough Agenda that aim to have, by 2030, clean power that will provide affordable and reliable energy to meet Serbia's power needs, road transport that will have access to affordable zero-emission vehicles. Hydrogen will be available globally as an affordable renewable carbon fuel. We understand that Serbia also intends to formalize its nationally determined contribution to global emissions reduction, cutting down its own greenhouse gases by 33.3% by 2030. Increasing the NDCs would put Serbia on a trajectory towards greener investments and a more prosperous future, acting as a flagship for the region. Now let me talk about some of the activities that U.S. Embassy Belgrade is doing for the environment and climate change in Serbia. Number 1, we have ongoing discussions on renewable energy projects with U.S. companies by bringing in solar, wind, and hydro projects. Number 2, USAID is active in projects involving energy efficiency and renewable energy that will move Serbia towards energy independence. Project preserving biodiversity in protected areas. And they helped the Serbian government implement the laws on energy that were adopted in 2021. Number 3, this year the U.S. Forest Service has trained Serbian Forest Service inspectors on preventing illegal logging, and next year they will provide training in wildland fire mitigation and firefighting. Number 4, the U.S. Department of Agriculture offers a variety of tools and supports climate adaptation for agriculture, forests, grazing lands, and rural communities. Number 5, the Office of Defense Cooperation offers training in environmental disaster response with the Serbian Ministry of Interior. Number 6, the U.S. Department of Justice provides law enforcement training and assistance related to climate enforcement. They collaborate with law students, judges, and defense lawyers to improve their ability to address environmental crimes and justice issues. Number 7, we have a sister parks exchange ongoing between Treća National Park and Gunnison National Park in Colorado to exchange best practices for forest management. Number 8, the embassy also enlisted an air quality expert from Fort Lewis College in Colorado. Her name is Joanna Casey, and she works with partners in Serbia on strategies to reduce air pollution. Dr. Casey is currently teaching virtually University of Belgrade students a course called Energy and Our Air. Dr. Casey also collaborated with the Serbian Ministry of Environmental Protection, offering expertise on air monitoring techniques to understand potential health risks arising from fires at the garbage dump in Vinča. We're also working with experts at one particular expert at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, who works on issues of health hazards with home heating stoves. We hope to welcome him to Belgrade later next year to cooperate with RES Foundation on that group's efforts in replacing old residential stoves with cleaner EU-approved stoves. The embassy has a long list of interagency U.S. federal government scientists and engineers that are wanting to share their expertise internationally. With the bilateral science and technology agreement renewed, Serbia can take advantage of this U.S. expertise. We have State Department Science Fellows, or Science Envoys for short-term projects, and Science Fellows for long-term projects, offering their expertise from a wide range of projects from air quality, nature-based flood control, biotechnology, urban planning, crop production, artificial intelligence, to experimenting with high-power laser physics. If you can imagine it, we probably have a scientist willing to work with you. The transition away from coal and fossil fuels won't be easy, but it is essential and needed urgently. It will require courage to make necessary changes, large investments in green infrastructure, strategies for local communities, retraining coal workers, sharing knowledge across borders on best practices, creating and expanding financial instruments, developing tools across all sectors of society to deal with the threats of climate change. The U.S. Embassy, Belgrade, is here to support Serbia finding sustainable solutions to these long-term challenges in Serbia. Thank you very much.
Zahvaljujem se gospođi T. Liber iz Američke ambasade. Naravno, bilo bi lepše da je ovde sa nama i to bi bilo interaktivnije, ali šta je tu je. Sad ćemo pokušati da improvizujemo Zoom konekciju sa Londonom. Preću na engleski da bi mogli da iskomuniciramo ovo. David, can you hear me? Okay, I'm switching the speakers on and we will try the connection. Just wait for my signal, please.
Yeah.
Just a second. You can try now, David.
Okay, can you hear me? Here I am. Yes.
Just a second. Yes, everything is fine. Let me just introduce you to our listeners, please. Mr. David Stanners is ex-head of program in the European Environment Agency. He was also scientific advisor in the European Commission before that. A good friend of ours. We were working together while I was national focal point for cooperation with the European Environment Agency. We have managed together, may I say that, David, to increase the level of reporting of Republic of Serbia to the European Environment Agency to 100%. I see that as great achievement because Serbia was at the position #1 in Europe, and I'm sorry, Simon, but Germany was like 10 or 11. So that's it from me. David, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, hi. Thank you, Jean, for introducing me and for inviting me to this celebration of work that you've already achieved. Congratulations on what you've already achieved. I think it's fabulous the access you're giving to people about environmental information, and the things that I would maybe just like to emphasize at the moment is to do with how this works. You know, what is the relationship between a better environment for people, better health for people, and the boring data and information. I say boring because sometimes people find data not very interesting. But actually, as we've discovered through the COVID crisis, and we're discovering with climate, which I mentioned both later also, good solid information is the actual prerequisite for any good effective responses. And if we don't have that, we're guessing. We are blind, like blind people in the dark, trying to guess our way through and decide what to do. So fundamental basic information is really, really important. And Deja and I have worked together for many years at European level, supporting the Balkans and Serbia as well, to learn from each other. And we've got this sense of sharing information, sharing knowledge, and learning from each other, because no one organization, no one government, no one scientist has all the answers. You have to create a network of people collaborating together and sharing the knowledge and information so that good decisions can be made. Now, for doing that, there's kind of three basic requirements that we need. first of all, you need the information and data to be relevant to the decisions being made. And what I mean by that is that if you have problems with health from air quality, then you need to have good information and data which relate to the air quality and relate to that. Relate to time, relate to seasons, and relate to the sources of the pollution. If you don't have this information, you really cannot understand what there should be done. So you need relevant, salient information, relevant to the problems and questions being asked, and the policies being put in place. You also need believable information, credible information, information which people can trust. Because just because the government or a scientist or an NGO says this is the information, how do they know to trust you? Why your data? Why not somebody else's data? Can I pick and choose? And the importance there is to show the source of the information data. Where does it come from? And normally we trust sources close to us. We trust sources close to our family, perhaps, friends, maybe my government, not your government. So it's to do with who are trusting networks around you. And NGOs often fill the gap, because sometimes NGOs are believed more than government. Yet some of the government information, much of the government information, is actually very good and solid. But people prefer to look at the information through an NGO. Well, that's fine. The thing is, sometimes this information is coming from the same sources. There was a really funny example that we had in the early days in the European Environment Agency, when the environment minister of Denmark, Svein Auken, who was a giant of a man, about tall, 2 meters to 20 tall, and he was confronted by some data that we had published about water quality in Denmark. And he said, no, this cannot be right, because the water quality in Denmark on this map is less good than that in the Balkans, less good than that in Lithuania, less good than that in Italy. That can't be the case, because we all know that the Danish water is the best water in the world. Well, we said, no, sorry, we don't all know that. That's maybe your perception, and that was actually the Danish perception, that the best water in the world. But we also said, this data is actually very, very reliable. So where does it come from? I need to look at this data. Well, actually, it comes from a Danish research institute. And he was live at that moment. He said, what? It comes from a Danish research institute? Well, maybe I'll have to change my mind. So he trusted the Danish institute. He didn't trust really the European one. But once he was confronted with the source of information he trusted, he changed his mind. I think that's a little example of how we can change perceptions and encourage action when we don't impose things, but we share things in an open way, and we have reliable, trustworthy information. So you also have to find what are your trustworthy sources of information, and talk to those and share those. The third point I wanted to underline was, whilst you have relevant information, while you have credible information, you also got to have legitimacy that you are providing that information. What do I mean by that? Well, somebody's got to say, why are you telling me that? You're not very legitimate, you're not very trustworthy. And I think in a non-governmental organisation situation, an organisation which only has responsibility to good information and data, you have good legitimacy, because people ask you questions and you can answer them, because you don't have any stake in the answer. You can say things are bad. If you ask the government are going to try to make things good. I mean, they will try to, of course, say that their policies are the best, and many of the policies can be good, but people are not going to trust them as much. They don't have as much legitimacy for providing good, solid information. So in the UK recently, with the COVID crisis, we've had these series of over the last 2 years, press conferences with Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, and beside him, 2 scientists, very kind of nerdy scientists who are only interested in good science. And so the press asked them about the COVID cases, the dangers, very frankly. And then Boris Johnson in the middle is saying, no, it's not as bad as that, it's okay, it's going to be good. He wants to be very positive And the scientists say, well, I'm sorry, we've really got to worry about this, and we've really got to put good policies in place. So you have this good interaction between a policymaker who tries to be optimistic and encourage good ways of being, but also the reality of the situation, and whether it be COVID or air quality or climate change, as we've seen recently, the predictions for that are not very good. And we've got to face those predictions and then put good policies into place. So this interplay between different actors is really very important to put in place. And I think the National Ecological Association that you've got in place there is one of these actors that can make the interactions and the action taken by policymakers very, very much more effective than before. And before I might also just try to point out that there are very many actors. Often we talk about the policymakers being the government, the agencies organized by the government. But actually, we all have agency. Members of the public have agency. And we've seen with climate how youth in particular have a lot of agency because they are invested in their futures. So they can do a lot, but they can only do that if they're provided with information. But also local authorities, they have more legitimacy to act for the local community. So we need to provide that local community with the knowledge so that they can also react in the right, cogent way. But also businesses. Now, often we look at businesses as being the bad guys. Actually, they're the ones who make a profit, and they will change their ways if they know that they can make a better business out of a good environment. And this is now happening tremendously right across the world with respect to fossil fuels. People are realizing that their future cannot be made if they're going to be all of their source electricity through fossil fuels. So they're shifting. Even without government policy, the businesses will shift. So actions depend upon many different levels. And so the information that you are providing through the system that you have with respect to air quality in particular is source material for all these different actors, for youth, for individuals, for local authorities, for businesses, as well as also for government. And I think when you then try to connect all those different elements up together, you can be very successful. And you can be also successful not just of changing people's habits, but also people's perceptions of what's really important. Air quality was regarded as a bad thing because it used to harm buildings. As soon as we understood that it harmed our lungs and harmed my children's lungs, that's when you had the changes happening. So when you connect particularly to health impacts, this makes things very, very quickly responsive to good government action. So making those linkages, I think, is very important. Clear, cogent information is very important to all the different actors. And I congratulate you on the work you've done so far to make this real-time information available for people so they can also make their own decisions during the day about what they expose themselves to with air quality, but also that this can pressurize local governments, businesses and national government to make the responses that are required to reduce the air pollution. My grandchildren, in conclusion, used to go to school in Brixton in London. I had two granddaughters going every day to Brixton. This was found to be the hotspot of air pollution in London. I didn't like this, so they moved to Manchester. They're now living in Manchester, away from this hotspot. Now, not everybody can move, but we've heard now that in the schools they used to be in London, in Brixton, they now have a local campaign to ensure that the traffic on the roads is being diverted away from the schools. This is a local action from young people. So this can also be something which can be very effective in reducing impacts. So strength to your arm, congratulations on what you've done, and I will be following very closely your progress, and I'm very happy to help you out in any way that you think may be useful for you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, David, and I will give you the feedback on your intervention a little bit later in this afternoon. Thank you very much for being ready to support us via Zoom connection, and we keep in touch. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. Kao što vidite, ovde dosta zavisi i od, kako se kaže, tehničkih sposobnosti pojedinaca. No dobro, važno je da smo čuli gospodina Stannersa i mislim da je dosta bilo zanimljivo ovo što je rekao i posebno u kontekstu onoga što Nacionalna ekološka asocijacija pokušava da uradi u poslednjih 8 meseci, a naravno nastavit će da pokušava da uradi i sledeće godine. Idemo dalje sa našim gostima. Dajem reč gospodinu Simonu Ilseu iz fondacije Heinrich Boll. Simon, would you be so kind to take the floor?
Thank you very much, Dejan. Dobar dan svima. Thanks for being here. And I would like to, first of all, second what David has just said. Congratulations to NEA, to Milenko and you, Dejan, for founding this organization, NEA, and for your activities throughout the year, and also, not least, to say your incredible courage, actually, for standing up for truth, for facts, for data, making it available to citizens to be able to take the right decisions for themselves, but also hopefully in the future for the government to take the right decisions to tackle these environmental issues. And I really think that people like you are really the kind of engines and drivers of any society that we need more, and that are the real, actually, patriots and the real engagers in their countries and in their society, because you really try to improve quality of life for people. My name is Simon Ilse, as Dejan said. Heinrich Boll Foundation, Heinrich Boll Stiftung, is a German political foundation affiliated to the German Green Party. We are not yet maybe in partnership with NEA. I wanted to stress this. I'm just here to endorse or support NEA as an organization and as an effort. I find it quite an extraordinary organization, not as ordinary as any other NGO, I would say. Also coming with experts and actually people that have come from the institutions and are still partly in the institutions and are real experts on these topics. So I think this comes at an interesting moment. We see in Serbia an increasing mobilization for environmental topics, be it against small hydropower plants, for better air, against investments that put the pollution up and the quality of life of people in question. Of course, against Rio Tinto as a potential lithium mining project. So a lot of let's say public resonance on environmental topics, which is a good thing as such. It comes, of course, for sad reasons, that there is a degradation in these topics, but there's we can clearly see an increased interest for these topics, and citizens are really claiming for better answers and improved answers to these topics. And it also comes at an interesting moment, because tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, we will see the opening of Cluster 4. It was already mentioned by my colleagues. Cluster 4 of the European EU accession negotiations, which includes Chapter 27, which we have been working a lot with partners as Heinrich Boll Foundation, Chapter 15 on energy, infrastructure chapter, and I think European corridors, or on the transport corridor chapter. So I would actually, even though a lot of people I know are questioning this decision to open now at this moment, where we see so much regression actually in the fundamentals of the European accession, a lot of people are questioning why we should open now a cluster. I would actually try to make the best out of it and to see it in a positive way, that we can actually, that actually opening the chapter, negotiating these topics, gives us more proximity and more instruments to look into detail into what's going on in the environmental sector, and to be able to hold the government more to account. At least that's what I hope for. It also is an interesting moment because the new German government, as you may know, just established itself finally after a coalition agreement was negotiated, and I'm very happy, of course, as the foundation that is affiliated to the German Greens, that the German Greens are in this new government and are from now on in the position of German Foreign Ministry, also the German Environmental Ministry and Economy and Climate Ministry that was newly formed in this new government, putting really the topic of economy, energy, and climate under one roof, if you want. So this is an important signal, and we will definitely see a more what the new German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock is calling climate foreign policy. So really a foreign policy that is not only diplomatic in this classic sense, but really puts climate foreign policy and climate negotiations in the core of its foreign relationships and relationships with other countries. It's also an interesting moment because we're still in the middle of the corona pandemic, and I just wanted to mention this very quickly because there's two important dimensions of the corona pandemic with regard to environment, which I think is not enough stressed and focused on. One is that bad air quality makes any society or any group of people even more vulnerable to a disastrous development with regards to a COVID-19 infection. And the second one is that actually the appearance of the COVID-19 pandemic can be very well traced back also to a crisis of biodiversity that we're living through, and an increased stress on wildlife populations. And this is very clearly actually mentioned in the EU biodiversity strategy, which is a very interesting document, and to which Serbia pledged its official support as part of the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans action plan and the plan as such and the agenda as such. So I think these topics to take really environmental, climate, and air quality struggles at the core of government action has also really its reasoning in combating the pandemic. I brought you two resources that we're using a lot in our work. One is a new report that just came out by the HEAL Alliance, which is an NGO that is doing amazing work actually on the nexus between public health and environment. And clearly they're mentioning air pollution as the single greatest environmental health risk in the world. And they looked at 4 cities in the Western Balkans, Skopje, Belgrade, Pristina, Sarajevo. And in Belgrade, we can definitely see that the problem of air quality is a very a dangerous one, and it puts actually really into question if the city government, but also the national government, is at the height of the challenge to improve air quality situation. It's mostly traced back in the HEAL report to Kostolac and Nikola Tesla coal power plants that are contributing vastly to the decrease in air quality. It's actually found they did a study on 2020 that the annual mean for small particulate matters 2.5 was 5 times higher compared to WHO guidelines, and more than 2 times higher for PM10. So these are pretty shocking figures, and it's clearly proven, and I think that should be really the drive for us to always remind on these topics and keep on advocating for it, that it is clearly connected to cardiovascular diseases, cancer, to heart diseases, and it actually causes up to 4,000 premature deaths per year in Serbia. So this is the number for all of Serbia. It can be said that it amounts to 1,800 premature deaths in the Belgrade suburban area. And what is what is a bit shocking and shows you that we are not exactly yet on the right way is that when we look at how emissions are, CO2 emissions are developing in Serbia, is that there's actually an increase of almost 5% of CO2 emissions in the year of 2018 and 19 respectively. We haven't seen a real turnaround. We have maybe seen more declaratory engagement, signing Paris Agreement, signing commitments at Glasgow, which was mentioned, and the Green Agenda and the Action Plan. But we're not yet seeing serious political will to go in that direction. That is, I think, very clear to everyone here. And the second resource I wanted to show you, I also put out 4 copies of it in the entrance, is this Chapter 27 Shadow Report by Coalition 27. I think a great document to report and monitor what's going on or what's not going on in the Chapter 27 negotiations with Serbia and the European Union. And it's the work of 9 different NGOs and civil society organizations that are working on the different subsections of the chapter. And yeah, some of it was already mentioned, but there's not been any significant document, for example, on the air quality fight. The air protection strategy has not been adopted yet. The national emission reduction plan has not been adopted and has been delayed. We have actually seen a legalization of the violation of the Large Combustion Plant Directive by 3 more years recently in the Parliament, which is a pretty catastrophic sign, in my opinion. But there's also some, let's say, small signs of optimism. We know you are the experts of air quality monitoring stations, but what we hear is that the quality of the measuring stations has overall across the board improved. The functionality of the system has improved, and there's been this one actually tender by the Ministry of Environmental Protection of Serbia to earmark 100 million dinars for reducing air pollution in Serbia by changing stoves in households, which are very often at the source of air pollution. So these are some small, tiny steps in the right direction, and I hope that, from what I said in the beginning, that this environmental awareness in the society is really increasing. I hope that the pressure will be higher, and that citizens will be even more effective in holding their government on the different levels to account. We have elections on 3 levels next year in less than 5 months here in Serbia, and I believe when I look at the opinion polls that at least the election in Belgrade will be actually a referendum on air pollution. It will actually be, people really want to see a clear ecological plan by their city administration of how this topic of air pollution can be tackled, and I really hope that there can be a constructive competition of ideas between the different political actors that are running lists in this election, and that the one with the best ideas wins, and that this can actually be applied. So thank you very much again, congratulations, and I'm also very interested to learn more about everything you achieved this year. Of course, we're all using already your applications, and thanks for that. Yeah.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you very much. Actually, you said many things that I wanted to say, especially those things that are having a critical point of view on the current developments, as well as this having so-called optimistic or positive view. Doesn't matter. I will invent something else. During the last but not least speech of Monsieur Antoine Avignon, the Communauté européenne, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Dejan. Dobar dan svima. So it's both difficult to speak after all the distinguished speakers because they mention a lot of information, and it's also easy because they mention so much that well, I will keep my speech very short. I think, I mean, overall, first of all, I was invited to the National Environmental Agency, but now it's the National Environmental Association.
It's enough. That's it.
And Diane, he knows the joke very well, because in a previous assignment I was working in a neighboring country in Albania, and the EU supported the National Environmental Agency, the official agency from the state, with air quality monitoring stations, with water monitoring equipments and supply, and technical assistance, and of course trainings and everything. And of course we have been doing, the EU has been doing the same with the SEPA, with the Serbian Environmental Protection Agency here for years. We have equipped the country with more than 28 air quality monitoring stations. We're not very happy about the monitoring results, because we breathe the air and we can see the results on the monitoring stations. But we're helping Serbia to build this network of monitoring station. We're also very in favor of citizen-based initiatives where we could see air quality monitoring stations taken in different places, small equipments, mobile equipment. So we are very happy to see that NEA, the association of Milenko and Dejan and your team, is taking up on this job and trying to bring more relevant, solid data to the citizen. Because I think, as the colleague from the EEA, David mentioned before, decision makers need solid data to take their decision. And I can tell you, coming from a public institution, the EU, that we also look for this. While I'm really happy that you are pulling this off, the new association, I also encourage you to continue to work with everyone in full transparency, and we're looking forward to, because we are also donors. We're also a donor, the EU. We're also looking forward for your application in our several calls for proposals. Again, working in partnership with the NGOs that have been in the sector for a long time to build better proposals. It's always appreciated. You have the support from many here. We also heard the American colleague, and it's good to see that the US is back at the table on climate. That could change a lot. It's a big emitter, and also has some power to convince people around. And this, we saw that the EU and the US has put this methane pledge together in a very short amount of time, which is an excellent diplomatic work based on science, based on knowing that methane is a more potent GHG emission than CO2, 4 times, I think. And so working on jointly on methane reduction is very important for keeping the Earth below 2 degrees. And hopefully at 1.5. But we are still far away from this. The scenarios are showing that we are still 1.8 if everything that was pledged under Glasgow is kept. And of course, who can keep the politicians and the countries accountable if not the voters, and making sure that what they have said and pledged is enforced. So congrats to you. Congrats for putting this association, NEA, together. I'm really looking forward to work with you. I'm also looking forward to the app. I think people really appreciate it. It's a lot of work that you have put there. I would say don't close the door to discuss with the institutions, with the national institutions. That's we also need to build national capacities, municipal capacities. apportionment of pollution is very important. Apportionment means when you know exactly where the source of pollution is. It can be Palace of Serbia, it can be the meat factory here, it can be the facility there, and knowing in which neighborhood, in which streets they are, is making life easier to approach them, and then to maybe look how to change their boilers or how to help them for energy efficiency. So thanks again, congrats, and looking to discuss for some debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Antoine. Thank you very much. I will now continue in Serbian just to wrap up the meeting and say a couple of things that I have prepared for this particular event. Hvala gostima još jedan put, a ja ću sada zaključiti sastanak tako što ću vam dati neke informacije koje će vam biti zanimljive i koje će na pravi način dodatno označiti ovu prvu godinu rada Nacionalne ekološke asocijacije. Dakle, nije 12 meseci, nego 8 meseci. Za tih 8 meseci napravili smo 3 aplikacije, one su u kooperaciji napravljene Nacionalne ekološke asocijacije i imena X-Eco, koji je samo zaštitno ime za Extreme Ecology. Dakle, sve ono što je već izmereno, nije došlo do vas, a što morate da znate, a na neki način je skriveno. Postoje 3 aplikacije, dakle X-Eco vazduh, X-Eco polen i X-Eco odžak. Najavljamo ovom prilikom 4. aplikaciju X-Eco kap. Nadam se da će od aplikacije X-Eco kap nikog neće da udari ista, mada nikad se ne zna. Dakle, ta aplikacija će se baviti kvalitetnom vode za piće, kvalitetnom vode za kupanje, kvalitetnom vode za vodosnabdevanje i kvalitetnom vode generalno. Tu će biti zanimljivih informacija. Za ovih 8 meseci, sem te 3 aplikacije, koje imaju više hiljada korisnika, neću da kažem tačan broj, više hiljada je dovoljno. Ovo je 3. konferencija koju organizujemo. Više desetina, ja sam izbrojao 107 različitih izjava su dali članovi stručnog saveta NEA, od kojih su neki ovde, kao gospodin Bakić, gospodin Božović, gospođa Elizabet Paunović, Milenko i ja. Više desetina nastupa u medijima, čak više desetina i nastupa uživo, što je za mene bio priličan stres. No šta je, tu je. Želim da se ovom prilikom na kraju ove godine zahvalim i svim onim državnim službenicima koji su, što sad moderno se kaže, ispod radara. Dakle, to su neki ljudi od kojih sve zapravo zavisi i bez kojih ne bi ni znali ni za taj prokleti Rio Tinto. Jer to su neki ljudi koji obrađuju te podatke, bave se svojim poslom, rade svoj posao profesionalno, bivaju vrlo često pod velikim pritiskom i bivaju zaboravljeni, a bez njih ni ove aplikacije koje je NEA objavila zajedno sa X-Eco ne bi bile moguće, jer to zapravo sve ove aplikacije koriste državne podatke i to je suština stvari. Mi ćemo nastaviti da koristimo i u budućnosti državne podatke. Dakle, hvala svima onima koji ove podatke proizvode. Kao što ste vidjeli, ja se nadam iz današnjeg toka konferencije, NEA ima zapravo više ovih fanova na engleskom govornom području nego na srpskom, zato je i aplikacija X-Eco vazduh nova verzija koja je dostupna građanima od prekjuče je i na engleskom jeziku, tako da ću ih uspeti da naše drugare koji žive u Beogradu, a brinu se i u Srbiji, a brinu se o kvalitetu vazduha, najzad nateram da koriste ovu aplikaciju. Nažalost, još uvijek nije spremna i iPhone aplikacija, što bi rekli Bože zdravlja. Ono što je također novo u aplikaciji X-Eco vazduh, to je ono što je Antoine rekao. Dakle, uključili smo u sistem preko 120 stanica iz sistema vazduh građanima, odnosno iz projekta vazduh građanima, odnosno poznati kao Klimerko. Ja se zahvaljujem ovom prilikom prijateljima iz tog projekta koji su nam omogućili da pristupimo tim podacima. Tako da sada u ovom trenutku X-Eco vazduh ima preko 300 lokacija na teritoriji Republike Srbije i sledećih dana ćemo se baviti posebno onim lokacijama, bar ćemo staviti fokus na njih, gde ima građanskih merenja, a nema državnih. Bojim se da ćemo dobiti spektakularne rezultate. Evo recimo još jedna od mogućnosti novih u X-Eco vazduh, to je u realnom vremenu praćenje prekoračenja trajanja zagađenja. Ja sam pogledao jutros aplikaciju i ona sada već pokazuje u realnom vremenu, dakle, koliko je bilo trajanje prekoračenja ove godine. Evo nešto zanimljivo i ja bih voleo da me neko demantuje od onih koji su raspoloženi za demantije. Dakle, Novi Pazar i Valjevo imaju prekoračenja PM10 čestica u trajanju od 135 dana. Dozvoljeno zakonom i odgovarajućom uredbom je 35, znači oni imaju 100 dana više nego što je dozvoljeno. Praktično više od trećine godine oba ova grada imaju prekoračenja dozvoljenih graničnih vrednosti PM čestica koje iznosi 50 mikrograma po metru kubnom dnevno. Ja zaista molim da neko to prokomentariše. Dakle, ovde nije sad stvar moje interpretacije, nije stvar indeksa kvaliteta vazduha, nije stvar strane aplikacije, neću ih imenovati. Ovde je stvar, dakle, ovo možemo da proverimo, možemo da zatražimo ovakav izveštaj preko informacije od javnog značaja ili šta ti ja znam, kako od institucija. Ovo je činjenica. Znači, ovo su podaci državnih institucija, državna stanica, Valjevo, Novi Pazar, ponovit ću, 135 dana, više od trećine godine, preko 50 mikrograma po... Do sada. Mislim, do kraja godine će vjerojatno doći do 150. Idemo drugi podatak, veoma zanimljiv, još zanimljiviji. Bor, čuveni Bor, gde je učinjeno sve, kao što smo čuli, da to ne bude tako. I sve je to iz nekog prethodnog perioda. Dobro, recimo da ima istine u svemu tome, da vreme zapravo ne teče i da mi stalno živimo tu 2012. godinu u kojoj sve što se danas događa, ono se zapravo događa kao nastao u 2012. godine. Međutim, ove godine u Boru je dozvoljeno, po zakonu je dozvoljeno prekoračenje satnih vrednosti koncentracija sumpor dioksida 24 puta godišnje. Praktično jedan dan. Dakle, 24 puta godišnje sme da se ponovi da je satna koncentracija prekoračena sumpor dioksida. Granica iznosi 350 mikrograma po metru kubnom. Obratite pažnju. 155 je rezultat. Ove godine, ne prošle godine, ne pretprošle, ne 2005. 1974. ili 1948. 2021. dakle govorimo o 2021. godini, u Boru od dozvoljenih 24 sata sa prekoračenjima prema važećoj uredbi koju je usvojila vlada Republike Srbije i koja je na snazi, od 24 mi smo stigli do 155 sati sa prekoračenjem. Ja molim nekoga zaista, preklinjem u ime Nacionalne ekološke asocijacije da to objasni. Šta je sa onih 155 minus 24? Dakle, to je 131 sat. Šta se dešava tih 131 sat? Dakle, mi imamo situaciju da, zamislite da 131 put prekršite bilo šta u vašim životima, vaše firme, ukoliko ih imate, da 131 put nešto ne urade kako treba. Morali bi da, nešto bi se dogodilo već. Verujem da bi se dogodilo prvih 5 puta, ne 131. Dakle, građani možda i mogu da kupe vodu za piće, Zrenjinci moraju da je kupuju, evo tu je naš prijatelj Guta koji mora u Zrenjaninu da kupuje vodu. Međutim, ono što mi zaboravljamo često, to je da još u prodavnicama ni trgovinskim lancima u Srbiji nije počeo da se prodaje flaširani vazduh, a meni se čini da, obzirom na ove podatke koje sam ja rekao, trebalo bi možda baciti neku tu ideju, ovi jači koji imaju, pa da deli neke markice, pa da skupite noževe kad nakupujete dovoljno vazduha. I ono što je sada tu bitno, to je ono čuveno pitanje da li je ovo sada što mi radimo politizacija. A ja ću na to postaviti kontrapitanje. Da li je kanalizacija politizacija? Da li je metro politizacija? Da li je autoput politizacija? Da li je vrtić politizacija? Pazite sad, znači, samo je kada pomenemo životnu sredinu politizacija, kad političari pričaju o kanalizaciji, to nije politizacija, nego šta je tačno? Mi govorimo o našem okruženju u kome živimo. Mi imamo pravo da o tome govorimo. Mi govorimo o tom okruženju na osnovu činjenica izmerenih vrednosti. Te vrednosti su izmerile državne institucije. To što su ih državne institucije prema starom, dobrom, prekaljenom pravilu iz 1946. godine stavile u neki izveštaj na stranu 237 i pokušale da sakriju od svojih pretpostavljenih, da ih ne bi pretpostavljeni kritikovali zbog toga što je nešto loše, a to je faktički i faktografski loše. To nije naš problem. Naš zadatak je da informišemo javnost o pravim činjenicama, o informacijama, o merenim vrednostima i u odnosu tih merenih vrednosti prema onome što piše u zakonskoj regulativi. Na kraju, ja ovde pozivam danas 2021. godine u eri digitalizacije, u vremenu kada je jedna od glavnih tačaka u agendi Vlade Republike Srbije zapravo ta ista digitalizacija, da se u najkraćem mogućem roku, ako treba, mi ćemo pomoći. Svi podaci koji su vezani za zaštitu životne sredine i zdravlje, na bilo koji način, stave na raspolaganje gde? Na portalu otvorenih podataka. Čijem portalu otvorenih podataka? Vlade Republike Srbije. Dakle, da se podaci koji smo se mi, često smo slušali u proteklom periodu i podatke vezane za COVID, ali nema razloga za tu netransparentnost. Hajde da sve institucije i one iz zdravstvenog dela koje rade takođe monitoring u oblasti zaštite životne sredine i one iz zaštite životne sredine, svih nivoa stave na raspolaganje u digitalnom formatu, u eri smo digitalizacije, sve podatke koje proizvode trenutno. Dakle, nemojte da čitamo o tome u septembru, o ovoj godini, da čitamo u septembru sledeće godine, hajte dajte nezavisnim institucijama, nezavisnim nevladinom sektoru, drugim institucijama da te podatke obrade i predstave ih građanima. U tom kontekstu ja pozivam vas ovde i pozivam sve one koji prate ovaj sastanak, ovu konferenciju preko interneta, nadam se da ih ima, ne znam, saznaću, da nakon ove konferencije, ukoliko žele, na sajtu Nacionalne ekološke asocijacije, dakle, sajt je nea.rs, ima tamo, sad lepo sam stavio crveni meni, gde kaže NEA tim. NEA tim znači da je to mesto gde ćemo skupiti informacije o svim ljudima koji žele da se priključe našem timu i žele da nam pomognu da sve ono što je već izmereno i sve što se zna o životnoj sredini ne dopire do vas, nema ko da analizira, nema ko da interpretira, da vam to učinimo dostupnim, da bi vi kao ravnopravni građani ove zemlje i u skladu sa svojim ustavnim pravima mogli da donosite odluke o sebi, svom okruženju, svojim porodicama i celom društvu. Hvala vam najlepše. Naravno, izvinjam se, hvala Medija centru što nam je ovo omogućio, hvala našim prevodiocama, to uvek zaboravim zato što nisam dovoljno puta vodio ove gde ima prevodilaca, hvala našim prevodiocama koji su takođe pro bono sve ovo radili, puno hvala, hvala svima vama, Milenku naravno završna reč, pošto Milenko je stariji.
Uopšte nije bila završna reč, nego samo da repliciram pozivu gospodina Avignona da ne zatvorimo vrata ka institucijama, naprotiv, mi držimo čvrsto nogu u vratima da se ona ne zatvori, ne našom željom. Želimo saradnju, želimo da pomognemo i da prosto informacije, odnosno izjave o stvarima koje su dobre, koje su rešene, nam nisu potrebni građanima. Lekari ne služe da medicinski sistem, da zdravstveni sistem da leči zdrave, nego da se brine o bolestima. Znači, samo problemi koji postoje, da se rešavaju sa načinima koji postoje već, sve je to već u svetu rešeno. Mi ne treba apsolutno ništa novo da prođemo, samo da primenimo uz puno odlučnosti, naravno i uz podršku gostiju, odnosno svih onih kojima je stalo do dobrobiti građana Srbije. Hvala još jednom.
Hvala vam i molim vas pridružite nam se na neku čašću pića. Hvala. Nismo predvideli, možemo ovako u dijalogu. Hvala.
That Rio Tinto is ready to start in April his lithium activity on the 14th destination. How is possible that it is, on my opinion, it is one schizophrenic atmosphere, that we are downwind the degradation